Hi, everybody. Welcome to our podcast number 2, Inspired Insights with Self-Help Connection. My name is Kate Ross, and on the phone with us is Glen MacDonald from our Inverness SHINE group. Hi, Glen.
Hi, Kate.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about SHINE and your involvement in SHINE, the kind of training that you've received, and also some advice that maybe others can help, that can help others. Firstly, can you tell me a little bit about your SHINE group in Inverness?
The SHINE group in Inverness is a self-help group that was started with the idea of people with mood disorders getting together and feeling that they're in a safe environment where they may wish to share some of their experiences or just to remain quiet and listen and
Nice.
just to be part of a group where they feel like they're not being judged and they feel safe and there isn't any pressure of any kind. I believe that the self-help movement is crucial in the treatment of mood disorders, that an action-oriented approach is the most effective way to treat a mood disorder, and you can find a way to help yourself as well as other people.
Awesome. And so how many people come to your Inverness group now?
Well, sometimes it can be very small. It can be just 1 or 2 people besides myself, and then other times it can be as large as 10 or 12 people. It kind of
Oh, wow.
it runs the spectrum. There's a wide range there. I just keep going every 2 weeks. It's a bi-weekly thing,
Okay.
and I just keep coming every time. And I don't really think about how many people are going to be there. I just make sure I'm always there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, wow, so it could be 1 or 2, but it could be like 10 or 12, you said. That's amazing. So why did you start a SHINE self-help group?
It's a kind of personal journey, really. I've had depression since I was 16 years old. Is when it really magnified and became obvious. So I was diagnosed at age 25. So it was kind of around that time when I first started to get help for depression that I wanted to. Somewhere up the road, I wanted to either become a mental health counselor or do volunteer work. And eventually, my career is as a commercial fisherman, so I do this on a volunteer basis. Always part of my plan for a long time that I wanted to do this.
How do you balance being a fisherman and being a self-help group facilitator, peer supporter?
Oh, that's a good question. It'll be one that will have to be addressed this upcoming season for 2018 season. Last year, my group at Inverness, actually, Janine from the Shetty Camp group, agreed to facilitate the group that I run in Inverness while I was fishing. So this year, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I may have to take a 2-month hiatus from the group. We'll address that at the time. There may be somebody from the group that could take over facilitator duties, which I would be very supportive of that. Started the group. I actually encourage everybody, if anybody ever wants to take a turn leading the group. I had that in place since day 1, starting this group.
That's awesome. So hopefully there will be like a shared understanding and shared responsibility throughout the whole group. That's awesome. How does mindfulness come into your practice? How do you yourself stay mindful?
I self-monitor my thoughts all the time, and I try to stay living in the moment instead of concentrating too much into the future or ruminating on the past.
Okay.
You just kind of try to remain aware of the fact that what's going on in your conscious mind anyway. Subconsciously, you wouldn't have as much control over, but I believe that if you kind of are aware of most of your conscious thoughts, then it does have some bearing on your subconscious over time.
Absolutely. And so how do you yourself look after your health, mental health?
I've got a lot of different things I do to maintain the stability of my moods. The self-monitoring of my thought processes and cognitions are critical. If you find yourself getting into a mode where you're being really self-critical all the time and really negative and being really too hard on yourself, I quickly nip that in the bud.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing to have. The ability to actually nip that in the bud and to really process this thinking is amazing.
It can be difficult at times. A mood disorder, sometimes you can slip into a depression for absolutely no reason at all. It just comes up. And I'm very lucky right now. I've had several months straight where I've had very little of that to deal with. Actually, you can take a diagnostic test. It's actually in the DSM.
Oh, yeah?
I have a book called Feeling Good by David Burns, first written in 1980. And he has a diagnostic test that anybody can take at any time. Just a couple of days ago with my girlfriend, and she scored a 10 out of 100 on it, which meant that, she might have a few little things that are kind of gnawing away at her, not depression or anything, but I only scored a 1 on it out of 1 to 100. So
wow, that's
point
awesome.
time, I'm very tense. I do a lot of other things to maintain, like exercise and meditation.
Nice.
A lot of positive affirmations all the time. That's one of my main strategies.
The last time I did a podcast, Janine spoke about how important confidentiality is in her SHINE group in Shetty Camp. And so why do you think specifically in Inverness confidentiality is very important? And how do you practice confidentiality?
It is really crucial because a lack of confidentiality can undermine the entire group. After a while, you would have nobody attending anymore. I just try to stress it at the start of every meeting that confidentiality is something that we stress. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can ensure, so you hope that just through repetition, by reminding people of how important it is, that they can abide by that. And of course, as facilitator too, you have to keep reminding yourself as well. You can't mention names out on the street. You just don't want that information getting out there. It depends on, well, that's the main idea, the cornerstone of the group itself.
Okay.
However, like I'll say on a personal note that for myself, it doesn't matter to me what anybody says about me out on the street. I've reached a point where I feel okay about having a mood disorder and probably having to maintain it for the rest of my life at this point, and I really don't care what anybody says about me in that regard. But on the other hand, somebody who is dealing with an acute state of a relapse or, say, a newly diagnosed person, they're not going to have the same opinion. They're going to be mortified if they think that the word gets out in the street. So that's why it's really critical to emphasize.
Absolutely.
And really enforce it. Something like that can happen, but all you can do is the best you can to try to ensure it. And repetition, I think, is the key, reminding people how important that is.
The repetition of group guidelines?
Group guidelines, yes. Go
Gotcha.
over them periodically, and especially when new members join the group, then you would want to go over them every time somebody new comes in.
In your group guidelines, so you have on the group guidelines how important confidentiality is, maybe respecting each other when someone's speaking. What other things are on your guidelines?
Well, those are the two most important ones right there. Just respect for the other people in the group. You don't want to have any side conversations going on while somebody is speaking, and you don't want to interrupt somebody when they're speaking. And also you have to have a certain, as facilitator, you're going to have to enforce some kind of a limit on how long somebody's going to speak. And sometimes I'll let that slide a bit if somebody is in a really bad, having a very bad week or something, and they want to vent a little bit. You can't just cut somebody off at the pass a little. Sometimes I'll let somebody go a little bit longer. It's required sometimes, so
of course
you just kind of go with the flow.
You kind of have to sometimes. I bet a lot of people, they might not have that many groups or that many communities that will allow them to speak, so you're probably giving them a really nice gift. What kind of training have you received? I know a couple of weeks ago you went to a peer support training. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Oh, that was awesome, the peer support training. It was led, the facilitator for that group, she's a lady from Ontario, and she everybody in the room basically is somebody who's in recovery from mood disorders and or addictions as well. She was a superb facilitator. It was really interesting, very informative and very inspiring, that training. And we also received a lot of book there too, and what I'm planning to do is to study that book maybe every 3 months or so, just reread it and try to get it to become part of, get it embedded in your mind all the time. A lot of really valuable information. One thing I learned in particular with that training, and of course we still have 2 more teleconferencing sessions to go, and 1 more 2-day stint in Truro with everybody present in the room. One thing that I asked specifically was, sometimes running a group like this, you may run into somebody who's always bringing up the same thing week after week, and maybe kind of long-winded, and like I alluded to before, sometimes sometimes I will let somebody speak a little longer, especially if you feel it's necessary. And it becomes a kind of a gray area there, because you can run into somebody who's, I don't want to judge anybody. It's like sometimes if you're hearing the same thing over and over, you just think to yourself, oh God, if that's not working so good, then maybe you have to try something else. And with a group like this, we're not trying to offer the answers to anybody. We're just listening and providing support. But
Absolutely.
I did ask them during peer support training, I said, well, in a situation like this, how do you reboot? How do you...
Or like direct them into something else so that they're not repeating themselves.
The answer that they had given me, because there was a lot of people in the room that were doing that exact, they were counselors and facilitators for years, and they said a lot of times they would ask, well, first of all, you'd say, well, what could I do to help you now, showing some empathy, but then beyond that, they would say, well, it's good to be honest and say, well, I don't think I can help you with this situation right now. I think I could refer you to somebody, and I would be happy to do that for you if you'd like, or I can accompany you somewhere. Like, say if somebody needed to go to outpatients or something, you're going to run across a lot of different situations. But if somebody's not in a crisis situation and they're kind of going over the same stuff all the time, then maybe that would be the approach I would take. I would say, well, maybe I could refer you to this therapist, and because I don't think that I think this is kind of beyond what I'm capable of doing.
Sometimes it's like totally out of your hands. And I think this is really valuable advice for the listeners of this podcast, because maybe there are some people that facilitate self-help groups that maybe have this problem where there's maybe one person in the group who just keeps talking about the same kind of problems or the same kind of worries. But as you say, sometimes there's not much you can do, and you kind of have to say there's not much you can do, but let's kind of change topics. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, it's but the idea is that you're going to have to look after your own health. That should be your primary motive. You're not going to be able to support anybody else unless you look after your own health first.
Yes.
So if somebody is bringing a predominantly negative or like a hopelessness to a group, then you're going to reach a burnout point eventually. And if you don't have some kind of a debriefing system in place, then your best bet is to say to the person, well, I don't think that I can help you anymore with these issues, or I don't think I can support you with this. I think this is beyond what I'm able to do for you, and you would offer to refer them to somebody. Or
you should absolutely look after your own mental health before anyone else. Self-Help Connection makes sure that we promote this saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup, meaning you have to look after yourself before you look after other people. And I think this is a great example from Glen. So thank you, Glen. The last question I have for you is, can you give any advice for someone wanting to start a self-help group? Advice about how to start one, how to maintain one?
When Janine and I started the Inverness County self-help group for mood disorders and called it SHINE, we were inspired by first taking a mindfulness course with a therapist who works at a shade camp in Inverness, Mireille Bourgeois, and it was inspiring, and she taught us some things and provided a lot more tools to our own toolbox in order to in living with mood disorders. So she provided a lot of inspiration there, and I think, I'm not trying to speak for Janine, but I believe she also had the same idea as I had, that someday you wanted to give back to the mental health community, and because her and I both received a lot of quality advice and assistance and counseling and therapy.
Absolutely.
Over the years, and you just wanted to give back. So
nice.
For anybody wanting to start a group like this, I think that first of all, you would probably want to be the type of person that just wants to help others that are suffering with the same type of illnesses. And then if you're kind of at a point where you don't really care what other people think about, if people are walking up and down the street and they're talking about me having depression, I'm at a point where I'm comfortable with that. It doesn't bother me at all. I think probably you need a little bit of that fearlessness, because when Janine and I, when we started the group, we promoted it by having an interview with a local newspaper, and we also went on CBC radio as well.
Good.
Both of us were at a point where we didn't really care what anybody thought. We just, our sole motive was that somebody could benefit from a group like this, as well as ourselves. I mean, we benefit from the self-help group because it helps us too, and it's part of our own coping mechanism and healing process and maintaining recovery and growing all the time. So hopefully to help others as well.
And as you said, you touched on this really beautiful point of how, for facilitators or peer support, people who facilitate and who are responsibility in keeping the group together, it is about your mental health and what you get out of it as much as everybody else's. And so that's really beautiful to think that it is helping you as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. So I don't have any other questions, but do you have any last remarks that you'd like to say?
Well, I just want to say to you, Kate, and to everybody at Self-Help Connection that I'm really, really grateful for everything that you've done to set up training for Janine and I, and the funding that's been made available to help us to go take these training programs, and all of the wonderful things that you guys have said to us in support. That it really affirms to both of us that we're doing the right thing, and we feel good about ourselves. And
Yes.
It feels good to hear somebody say stuff like that. So I really appreciate that.
Well, you are so, so welcome, and you are absolutely doing amazing things, and we are so grateful to have you. Thank you so much, Glenn, for being here today. Take care.
You too, Kate. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody.